All right, hello everybody. Welcome again for those returning guests to Unleashing Microsoft Teams, and for those joining us for the first time, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jace Marino, and I am the Global Customer Success Lead for Teams Platform here based out of California. I've got the pleasure today of having some support as we go through this meeting and we talk with Unilever and the legends over there. Emma, thank you so much for joining us. Emma is the Customer Success Manager for Unilever. Emma, I want to say hi to everybody.
Hi everyone, thanks Jace for inviting me today. I'm really excited about hearing from my customer Unilever and sharing some of the experiences they've had over the past few months with the platform.
Awesome. And we've got a borderline celebrity, Stu, on the back end doing all the producing for us. So we'll send out his details as well. Stu's one of our amazing customer success managers, also based out of the UK, who does some amazing work with customers around the globe too. So thank you again, all guys, for the help. Now, again, if you're just joining us, a little bit of background on what we do with these Unleashing Teams calls and the reason we started these is this is really about exploring how other organizations are using the tools they have to do things they've never done. And so every time we run one of these live events, while Microsoft Teams will always be front and center of what we're talking about, this isn't just about Microsoft products and technology. This is about leveraging other investments you've already made as an organization and bringing them to life. And so what's critical to actually doing this effectively is the approach. And we say this often, but the productivity isn't just about the tool, it's also about the approach. And so during these events, we'll highlight organizations such as Unilever, who you're going to hear from today, who have had incredibly successful and unique approaches. So with that, I wanted to share a couple quick quotes before we introduce our guests, because these really struck me in one of our first meetings that I had with these two, on how unique and how awesome their approach was, which will go to show you the success they've had as we go through their journey and the impact it's had on their organization. But this was one of my first ones that I remember here, was that Unilever looked at this transition from Skype for Business to Teams as not just a transition from blue to purple. And if I can summarize what that means, this isn't just a technology transition. In fact, they looked at it as a way to transform how Unilever works. So by giving our people one hub for everything that we do. And I loved those two quotes when we were having our chat. And I knew these two would make amazing guests for one of our Unleashing Teams calls, and very fortunate to have them here today. So without further ado, let me introduce our two legends here from Unilever. We've got Varun and Nandini. Would both of you mind doing a quick introduction of yourselves and what you look after?
Yes, happy to. Hi, I'm Varun. I am the Digital Employee Experience Manager at Unilever. My role is really to kind of build the enterprise chat solution that we have, making sure that employees have one single place to find answers, do tasks, and get help. That's kind of the vision that we're trying to drive with the experience journey. Approximately 15 years in the industry doing various things, really. Nandini?
Hi, this is Nandini. I work as a collaboration products and solutions manager within Unilever, almost with the 15 plus years of experience taking along with me. And my role is primarily towards making sure that the Unilever users are using the right tools for collaboration.
Well, we're humbled to have both of you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, let's kick things off, and maybe Bruno and Nandini, if you can give us a little bit of background on Unilever. We don't want to assume everybody knows about who you are, but also I think what's really important is talking about your teams here that were central to the transformation journey that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so let me kick it off, Jason. I'm sure not many people may know Unilever as Unilever, but the moment we kind of talk about some of our brands, it is such a pervasive brand across the world that I'm sure it kind of lights up recognition in people's mind. When you think about brands like Lipton, Walls, Ben & Jerry's, that's my favorite actually, Surf, Omo, PG Tips, Sir Kensington, there are more than 100 very, very massive brands that we have around the world, supported by a large portfolio of brands which are in our daily household lives. Some we have grown up with, some we interact with on a daily basis. So as Unilever, we're a massive company spread over about 100 plus countries, 160,000 people globally, of which we have about 120,000 folks who work in the offices. And again, 80% of those are employees that we have. We have a large population as blue collar workers as well, who work in our factories, in our tea plantations and feet on the street, really. But that's the entire universe that we have. Now, in terms of our setup as an organization, we have a services division which is called UniOps. This is all Unilever operation services combined into one. We have a massive focus on employee experience. So we have a full organization that is being carved out actually for employee experience. I belong to that organization as a product owner for Una. Una is our brand, which represents this digital suite made up of both Microsoft and ServiceNow kind of platforms and a few in between, making sure that people can get to the knowledge key questions that they're asking on a daily basis, get their common tasks done, and then also get help if any of these don't work. So that's kind of us as employee experience technology, making sure we land the technology solutions that can improve employee experience. And I'll hand over to Nandini, who can talk a little bit about the collaboration services for our O365 platform. So Nandini, if you want to take that over.
Sure. So like Varun mentioned, so we are from UniOps team. So we have separate divisions of IT sectors within UniOps. So while Varun is from the employee experience team, so I come from collaboration services team. So the vision of our collaboration services team is basically to optimize Unilever's productivity through the right collaboration tools, and also major focus is towards how we can bridge the gap between our users and our partners to be able to hear the voice of our customers and then influence our partners accordingly. So we manage most of O365 suite of applications, including Microsoft Teams, Yammer, and OneDrive, SharePoint, and rest of them. So most of them are comes under our remit. That's where we are, and this is really exciting to see how Unilever collaboration services team and employee experience team come together to work as a team from Unilever to be able to showcase Microsoft Teams as a single hub platform to be able for our users for accessing various different applications or doing the collaboration or communications, etc.
This is great. Something I want to call out here, and Emma, if you want to shed any light on this too, please feel free. But something that we talked about that I think is really special about Unilever is your alignment that you have between all of these teams. And it might seem fairly simple to folks on the call, but it's fairly profound and important that you've got not only both of your teams, but then also the connection into the application development team. And I think ultimately that's surely led to a bunch of the success that we'll share today that you've had. Anything else you want to add there, Emma, though? I know you manage a bunch of Microsoft customers as a customer success manager, and this is probably a best practice. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, of course, Jace. So I think from my experience, I think typically we always think about just a pairing of the business and the technology team, but coming together like we have here and really putting our heads together to deliver a solution for users in the business is definitely best practice. So when I think about it, ultimately multiple teams within Unilever have come together here. They've put all of their perspectives together and they've built an end-to-end strategy to really deliver value. And I think that what Unilever's done here is really second to none. And you'll hear a little bit more about that as we go through, I'm sure.
So Varun, shall we move on to the background here and your technology background and the opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. So awesome. Yeah, I think, and Nandini can start a little bit about how we thought about teams, and then maybe I can come in a little bit about the overall org transformation and how can it fits in. Nandini, if you want to kick it off, and I can take over from there.
Sure, that's absolutely fine with me, Varun. So just before we start off with the technology background and the business opportunity that we saw within Microsoft Teams for Unilever Business, let's take a few step back and see how Unilever utilized Microsoft Teams as a trending technology and which helped us move more than 95% of our users into Microsoft Teams from Skype. And the business opportunity, how we leverage Microsoft Teams to be able to the application platform for our users to treat as a one hub for doing everything, finding answers, doing tasks, etc. So Microsoft Teams was identified as a strategic tool for collaboration and communication within Unilever. So to provide a single hub for users to be able to communicate and collaborate efficiently. So this made kind of, for us to think about the legacy applications that we had and the tools that we had, such as Skype, and to ramp up those applications quickly as we move on to the Microsoft Teams. So we kicked off our journey. If you talk about our journey in terms of moving from Skype to Teams, so we started our journey in December 2019, and where we started with small set of pilot users with hundreds of users, onboarding them to the meetings and callings, and then expanded those pilot users to the batches. And these batches were geographically spread. So while we were doing the pilots, our business was very keen to be part of this pilot, and they were very happy to be onboarded to experience the meetings and callings while they were already experiencing the collaboration aspect of it. So to be honest, before we started the formal rollout of Teams for meetings and calls, so our goal was to reach more than 60K cumulative users adoption for collaboration purpose. And we did that before November 2019. And that made us a base for smoothly kicking off our project of journey from Skype to Teams. I think we as a program team, what we believed was defining a strategy and executing this strategy is a key, which helped us the faster rollout of Microsoft Teams within Unilever globally. And also as a icing on the tip, so COVID-19 situation also helped us with the faster Teams adoption as well. So while we were on this journey, so we also leveraged Microsoft Teams as a platform for hosting various business applications as well. So in the coming slides, I'm sure we'll be talking about a few of the core applications that we have integrated. So with that, Una is one of the major applications that we have integrated, which Varun can talk more on.
Real quick before we pass off to Varun, and really excited to hear about Varun, so forgive me for a second here, but yeah. Nandini, is there any insight or thoughts you had around this right here? Because I mean, 50K early adopters is a staggering number on Teams. And not that you have to have these, but were there any insights or things that you heard from users on why this was such an organic adoption?
So yes, it would be right if we say it was an organic adoption. Emma, I'm sure you can add more to it, as you have seen this adoption growing organically with the collaboration aspect of it. So initially, as we see, right, the adoption and change management is a key for rolling out any of the tools for our users. Our users already had a Skype at their hand to be able to chat with others or to be able to initiate the conversations or make calls. However, having Teams on the side, it was kind of a situation where users were more going towards Skype. I already have Skype, let's keep using it. And we had to do a lot of communications and adoption programs through our champions networks or the digital ninjas, what we have, and help them understand the value of Microsoft Team, how it would help us unlock the productivity, improve the business cases, and etc. So through these various channels and the champions network, slowly we saw that our users started, getting adopted to the Teams, where the most loved feature of the Teams by our users initially was the persistent chat, where they could see, they were able to see, our users were able to see the chat being persistent, so they could visit it at any point of time if they would wish to.
That's great. Emma, anything you want to add?
Ultimately, I think the team just did a fantastic job of generating energy around the change. As we mentioned at the beginning, ultimately from the outset, we thought about this as not a change from blue to purple, but a real business change. And I think, we started generating a lot of that FOMO, that fear of missing out, because actually we were not just talking about this new meeting tool, but we were talking about how it was going to change, how it was going to save people time, how it was going to make Unilever more inclusive, and ultimately how it was really going to revolutionize the way that they collaborated. So I completely agree. It was a staggering figure, and it was crazy. Every time we came back week after week, we were seeing more and more adopters of the technology. So it was, just fantastic. And I'm sure, Nandini, you can agree that it definitely helped that we had quite a lot of team swag floating around the Unilever organization at times as well.
Definitely, yeah.
When in doubt, add some swag. I like it. That's great.
Okay.
No, congratulations again. So Varun, do you want to tell us a little bit about Unabot? Really excited to share this with folks today.
Yeah, absolutely, and would love to actually. But just take a step back, right? I think Unilever, like Emma said, right, and Nandini said, we've been at the forefront in terms of understanding the employees and transitioning the Unilever, employee experience, if you would. So for us, what is a massive deal right now is how do we fuel our growth? And a lot of that comes from unlocking some of this productivity, which gets lost in people switching different systems, different teams, different platforms, if you would. So we've been on the journey of transforming our experience, and largely in the HR space for the past couple of years, if you would. And we've transformed our processes, in HR over the past couple of years, make sure the processes themselves, can be digitized. And that's kind of what the genesis of Una was. How do we make sure that a lot of time that people spend switching different systems for different functions, for different applications, a lot of that goes away, and they can really focus on getting the job done. So for us, making sure that we can break down these functional silos. So we started with HR, but we then wanted to kind of really go forward from there and expand that to all key functions. So imagine Una having knowledge for key questions for HR, and you can log a ticket from there. But now taking it forward from there to say IT, finance, workplace, travel, legal, all key functions, not just HR. You have one place where you can get access to knowledge. You can log a ticket. And if any of that doesn't work, you would be able to get help from the same screen. And that's really the vision for Una for us in terms of making sure we can get it. I think from our overall approach perspective, we actually, like you said earlier on, the teams work very collaboratively across understanding, okay, here's, we have in Skype, here's what we want to go to Teams. So the idea was, yes, we are going away from Skype and go to Teams, but it wasn't just the blue to purple. It's how can we fundamentally shift the experience people have with Una? How does this become their start point for their daily lives, daily work lives, if you would? And that's kind of what our opportunity was. If we can get this right, we can unlock massive amounts of productivity on a daily basis from our employees or for our employees.
Love it. I'm looking forward to spending some more time on this, because I think one point is really important that you touch on there, and I'm just going to frame it a little bit differently if you don't mind. But we hear a lot of organizations, and you have all, if you've joined one of these calls before, heard me talk about this, so forgive me, but we see a lot of organizations that will build solutions and teams for a point in time scenario, right? So as an example, how do we just get people to adopt Microsoft Teams? Let's build a frequently asked question bot so users can self-serve. And I think that's fantastic. But the reality is you also want to have solutions with longevity. And in my mind, maybe you don't phrase it that way, but that's exactly what you've done with Una. Is you built it to deliver a great use case, prove that it works, and then it started to expand its value across your organization. So really looking forward to jumping into this, and it's a great background here. So maybe we can do this. I wanted to share with everybody, and I tried to summarize this in almost a journey format on the transformation journey you have all taken. And going about this in 3 different layers, the way I kind of paraphrase this, and so forgive me, but it was, how do you first get started with Teams? So how do you make it easy for people to jump into Teams, to leverage what you already have in terms of your internet, your knowledge base, and your resources, and self-serve? So you can reduce some of that question and answers that are the questions that are constantly coming to your experts and the team that's running adoption. But users also feel excited and comfortable, right? And again, back to Emma's point, swag helps a ton here. And then from there, how do you modernize with Teams? So Unabot is where we're going to focus on this one, but how do you take those existing investments you made in this case, Skype for Business, and start to not only modernize that by giving it new functionality and capabilities, but also evolve the scenario potentially, as we just mentioned. And then finally, how do you respond with Teams? So how do you respond to macro and micro environments, right? So changes like COVID as an example, and we're going to see a great example of how the team at Unilever really quickly pivoted when COVID came around. And so with that, let's go ahead if we can. And I believe, Nandini, you're going to be talking about this, talking through Get Started with Team, which I believe you guys have now rebranded here to Teams Bytes, and some of the journey and evolution of this, if you would.
Yeah, sure. So if we look at when we started rolling out the Get Started app within App Store, that was when we started our Skype to Teams transition back in January 2020. So we rolled out this Get Started app into the Teams App Store primarily for our users to be able to self-train themselves. So that they don't have to go anywhere else to learn about what Microsoft Teams offers, what are the different capabilities we have within the Skype to Teams program. So what different roadmaps we have, or where are we in this particular program, when some geographies are getting onboarded to the meetings and calls, any FAQs that they may have, and many more such scenarios are covered in this particular app. So as the name calls out, right? So the Get Started was mainly targeted for the users who were very new to this particular tool and had no idea in terms of what this Microsoft Teams is about. So that it can help them learn themselves, right? So something like, how they can self-learn themselves about something they are interested to use. So during the journey of Get Started as well, we also learned from our user feedback that having the apps, couple of apps such as Planner or OneNote, which is used by our users day in, day out, and they love them, those apps to be used to take notes or to be able to track the planning, etc. So we started pinning these apps into the left-hand rail of the application, and this was a very big win for us, to be honest. So as we progressed with the transition of Skype to Teams, so almost towards the end of the transition, so the Get Started also evolved into Teams Bytes. So what this Teams Bytes is about? So this is the Teams Bytes is again a revamped version of a Get Started application, which the major focus of this Teams Byte is on evolving how others work, right? And hearing from our users what they need is provided at ease of access for them. So while Teams Bytes application, as you can see on the screen, has multiple tabs on it, so various tabs has its own importance, which gives the information at the fingertips for our users. So the first tab, as very well we can see on the screen, so it talks about the team tips. So we have our experts within the organization, Teams experts, who publishes the Teams tips and best practices every week on week, and the most liked or the recent ones are published for our users in this particular tab, with an ability also to view more tips, the previous tips, or more best practices if they would wish to. And also some of the snackable videos or the deep dive articles, which we feel that that could be useful for our users to be upskilling themselves on the Microsoft Teams. And also the second tab on the Know More of Microsoft Teams. So this directly points to our Microsoft Teams product site, which is a SharePoint site in the backend where we host all our training content, event information, news, best practices, tips, and many more in that site. So this is one product site for Microsoft Teams where a user can go to find any information that they would want to. And the third tab is really interesting, which talks about the product roadmap. So this tab points to a Power App, which our team has developed. And this Power App, what it does is it gives the ability for users to know what and when what features are released and when. And these features could be something which is released by Microsoft as per the O365 roadmap, or it could be some of the solutions or innovations that are delivered by our internal team. So users get a view of when these features would be made available for them through this particular app. And the next one talks about the latest news, which gives a digestible view for our users on the latest news and the trending news on Microsoft Teams, where also we host the best practices and the guidelines for our users in terms of what they should be aware of, do's and don'ts, etc. And also the next one is on Teams events. So we have various Teams events that we host within our organization along with Microsoft. Recently, we hosted MS Store sessions, webinars, and also we host a couple of Champions Connects month on month. So all those event information, anything related to the Microsoft Teams are published over here so that user can go and have a look and save it to their calendar or directly attend from there. And the next tab really talks about the work with external. So for for large scale organization like Unilever, right? So it's really important when how easily can we make our users seamlessly collaborate with our external parties or suppliers. So this particular tab gives us all those step-by-step guidelines and the information for our internal users, which guides them how easily they can collaborate with their external partners. And the last one is about case studies, some fascinating case studies that our experts have written along with our business users for other business teams within Unilever, which they can look up to and learn and adopt from. So overall, TeamSpite, we see this as one single app which a user can have to excel and to be a champion in a teams.
This is brilliant. And just to reiterate for everyone here, if this is new to you, so you took what was, and correct me, Nandini, if I'm oversimplifying here, but you took your intranet site, you pinned it for users on the left-hand rail. We're going to send everybody a link on how to do this. It's pretty easy. And then because actually when you pin an application over or a site on the left-hand rail in Teams, it technically becomes a personal app. What you can do is you can add tabs to it, which is what you were talking through right up here, where you've got all these different key pieces of information for users that I'm assuming you update on a regular basis based on what you're hearing from your people. And again, like simple win, but we're seeing some incredible numbers of users jumping onto these types of services, and it makes your life easier. Again, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's absolutely right. So it is basically to help users to self-learn themselves and self-look for help themselves within the Teams context. They don't have to go anywhere else to learn about what they can do with Teams or any questionnaire that they may have, or say, for example, any features that are getting rolled out. How do I switch on the new meeting experience, etc. So there are various questions for the non-IT business users which they may not be aware of. And this is the app which serves the purpose of training them on what they are looking for.
One quick question for you, service request. This came up from one of the folks on the call right now. Does that connect into a backend support system when that request is made?
Yes, absolutely. So there are a couple of service requests, automated service requests that our internal team has delivered based on what we hear from our users. So a couple of examples that I can quote is, say, for example, today we do not have the ability to bulk add team members into the Microsoft Teams. We have to add either the distribution list or the users one by one. So there is an automated service request that we have built up, completely automated end to end, where user goes and submits the request with a list of users, 100 users, 200 users, whatever it could be, and the system takes care of adding them in the backend to the team. So like that, there are a couple of service requests that the team has built fully automated, and users just have to go there, and if they are based on their need, they can go ahead and submit the request and the system takes care of doing the job for them.
So cool. I'm pretty embarrassed how excited I am from pinning an internet page right now, but this is just such a great solution. So thank you so much for sharing it. And again, it's great to see the evolution, going from Get Started to Teams Bytes and how you're updating the content. So really appreciate you walking us through this. We're getting a ton of great feedback on the chat. So Nandini, you're a legend. Thank you so much. So maybe then going back to the transformational journey. So now we've gotten started with Teams and we're evolving that scenario, as you just heard. The next step here is how do we modernize some of these existing solutions? And of course, as part of Get Started, there was a lot of modernization, just my term here. But would love to spend some time, Varun, talking with you about Unibot. And again, the journey that we talked about earlier, where it started as a focus with HR, where it was in Skype for Business, you brought it into Teams and some of the things you thought about. And then what we'll do for everybody here on the call is we're actually going to talk about how Una evolved when COVID hit. So I'll pass it over to you, Varun. Would love to hear your thoughts here on the background.
Sure. No, I think, as you can see, one key theme that's running across both Nandini and I that are talking is do within the same screen. The cognitive overload, if you think about, for people to switch screens, start finding what they're trying to find in a new place is humongous. The amount of time it takes for people to kind of focus, find, etc. is just, terrible waste of time, really. And that time can be invested in the business, doing something, propelling the business forward. So for us, while we started, like I said, with chatbot or with the HR transformation space, our objective really is how can we do self-serve and self-serve from the same screen. So as we started the whole journey, the pretty big focus for before you do anything with respect to the bot is, are your processes ready to handle the bot? Is your system landscape ready to handle the bot, if you would? So for us, it wasn't really about technology. It was about the change in the mindset. It was just making sure that people understand, are we as an organization ready for it? And we were quite convinced about it, because even when when we went live with Una with HR last year, we actually switched off telephone numbers for HR support. We switched off email support for HR support. That's how confident we were. So, we had massive amount of success. The amount of transactions, hundreds of thousands of knowledge searches, self-service searches from the same page is just tremendous. But then how do you go forward from there? How do you take it? Because the employee doesn't care if they have to come for HR here, but for IT, they have to go to a different place. And for finance, they have to go to a third place. So for us, the ambition became bigger and bolder, expanding this beyond HR. This is about entire employee experience for all services they have within Unilever. And that's kind of where we said, okay, yes, we've got the opportunity to go from Skype to Teams, because as an organization, we were moving from Skype to Teams. But we then looked at it as a massive opportunity for us to listen in to what people were saying about the Skype bot, learn and understand and say, how can we re-architect to the latest version from a bot framework perspective, but also understand what can Teams offer us. And there were tons of capacity or capability that we kind of unlocked with this. One of the biggest challenge, Jace, if I can tell you, with anything with Una really, is, or with any chatbot, if you would, is the understanding of a chatbot about users' natural languages. When you start chatbot typically has an understanding of an 18-month-old. From there, to make sure that the bot can understand what people are trying to say is complex. And very few extremely high investments kind of make the right combination of language understanding and what the user is trying to say in your business context gets very, very successful. So for us, Teams gave us the opportunity for us, in addition to chat, can we also have some sort of menus? And those menu chats has been a massive hit and a massive way that people have learned and adopted Una from a chat perspective. For us, going from just text into leveraging the Teams core capability of adaptive cards, rich text, bringing the real human emotion in it with the emojis and GIFs, and we have actually coded some of those in Una ourselves. When you really like something in Una, you actually get a dancing, a GIF come through to you, which puts a smile on some people's face, if not for everybody. So we started with Skype. We wanted to understand this language and kind of go past that language barrier, if you would, as we kind of work through. And then, as Nandini said, we kind of pinned this to the left rail because we really wanted this to be a key place where people start their journey. We, of course, got a lot of capability in terms of collecting or connecting a few features amongst ourselves. And as we are on the journey right now as an organization, transforming our ticketing system, our help desk systems on the underlying platform, if you would, this has also been a massive journey for opportunity for us to connect and make sure that all ticketing, all live chat support services, and all kind of your FAQ kind of knowledge all comes together in one place in the core platform and can be surfaced through this chatbot. So just making sure that we can integrate this whole end-to-end self-service journey is a massive area that we want to look at. And in addition to that, can we simplify some of those common transactions that you do? If I can give you an example, Jace, one of the things that we rolled out very recently in Una is how can you fetch your pay step? What it does essentially is very simple. You want a pay step, it'll go into the core HCM system and fetch your pay step for you. And you can specify a month. You can say I want a pay step for this month, and it extracts and kind of does the job for you. We thought it was a fairly normal thing to do, but the amount of positive feedback we've received from our employees to say how easy it is without going and clicking 20 places, 20 clicks to kind of get to your pay step. This is massively simplifying what I want, when I want, at my fingertips. So that's kind of the journey that we've had, and I think Teams played a massive role making sure that we can land the impact, the experience, and bring it all together for people.
And you touched on a couple of things that I think are so important that we reiterate here. One of them that you just said was, in my mind, is start simple. Right? A lot of organizations might be watching this and you see Unabot and you see your connection into all these services and it might seem overwhelming, but again, you didn't necessarily start there. And these simple use cases, like to your point with checking payroll, start to get believers, right? You start to drive adoption much faster because people see, oh, not only do I have consistency and familiarity, to Nandini's point earlier, where I see these tools and applications and people inside of teams together in one centralized location, but then this is actually solving some of these things that are driving me nuts about the way that I work, right? And again, my words, not yours, but these simple wins that make people's life easier. Like last night, we were talking to a customer on our call we do for the East, and they were talking about how excited some of their receptionists were about this simple little power app they put in there, right? Just solving a really easy use case, and that stuff, I think we shouldn't overlook it. So start simple, get people excited, and minds will start to expand. The other one is the importance of the first experience with the bots. You talked about it being an 18-month-old roughly, and I love that, because look, let's set some foundations here. I think starting with a bot is easy because we've got a lot of templates out there, and we're going to give all of you the direct links so you can start with your bot. So pointing it into a knowledge base or a repository of questions, creating that is pretty simple. But to create something of value with longevity takes some work. And one of the things I love that you guys have on here is the menu that you have in the chat. And if you're not familiar with everybody here, there's an option to create a menu right above where you start typing with the chatbot. And that menu, you can click on it. And if you came to one of our last calls, I've shown how we do this internally, but you've got a set of options right there. So the reason that's important, if somebody's not comfortable chatting with a bot, they pop in, they don't know what to write, but then they can see a menu list of options that allow you to interact properly with the bot. Because what happens if you don't know how to interact with the bot and still in the early phases, to Varun's point, and you ask it a question that it doesn't recognize, people might go away from the bot and never come back, right? So again, just huge value in your amazing vision, I think, with Una. And Varun, do you want to maybe share? I know we had a screenshot here and a couple other things that you were working on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. This is a quick screenshot in terms of how simple the journey could look like. The self-service journey that I mentioned, Jace. So what you see is somebody has a question. We've got about over 30 features in Una which interact with various different systems, from payroll to what is the balance of my purchase order, or has this invoice been paid or not, and some of those features are. It's an ever-growing list. But let's say if the bot doesn't understand, it pretty much works like a Siri Cortana. Well, I shouldn't say Siri here, I should say Cortana. It works like Cortana here, where it says, oh, I don't understand what you're saying, but here's what I found on the web. In this case, it polls our knowledge base and says, I don't know what you're saying, but here's what I found in knowledge. You can access your knowledge, and if that works, fantastic, because that's what we want. You don't have to wait for a case to be raised for somebody to answer the question for you. Self-service, fastest, easiest, better ready, if you would. But if that doesn't work, you get a few options. You can log a ticket from here, or at a click of a button, you can actually talk to a live agent from the same screen. Again, the key theme kind of running over, making sure that the experience that people have is don't click anywhere else, go to a different screen, find a different menu somewhere. From the same screen, get to what you're looking for, and if not, get help from the same screen as well. So it's that consumerization, the consumer world experience actually, or consumerization of enterprise, as we say, making sure that a lot of people, what we see in our external world, in our consumer world, people expect some of those experiences in the enterprise. How do we unlock that? I think has been one of the key mantras for our simplification, if you would.
That's a really good point, especially when you got folks like Emma who like to bring in the millennial mindset and drop terms like FOMO. Yeah, that stuff's really important, though. I think is again having that connection between consumer and professional, and really lowering that barrier. I think there's another way I might think about it. So there's no transition. You don't feel like it's different when you either physically walk into the workplace, which we know is rare now, or log on to with your laptop or your computer at home. So it's a great point. So we've got Get Started. So we're helping users not only learn how to use Teams, but to evolve the way that they actually collaborate and communicate internally. We've got the evolution of Unabot here, which is amazing. And then COVID happens, right? So February, March this year, COVID happens and a lot of stuff starts changing. But this is one of the beauties of what we see with a lot of organizations and teams, and it's how do you respond with teams? Now, don't get me wrong. I think the first thing we need to consider here is business continuity. And a lot of organizations use Teams and other services, whether or not they were built by Microsoft, to just become digital overnight, right? But then it's, okay, now we're digital, and now this sets us up for an opportunity to really transform, or again, respond with some of the technology that we have at our fingertips. And so before we jump into the health check solution, could you give us a little bit of insight here, Varun, on how you evolved Una very quickly in order to pivot when COVID hit and you had a bunch of folks who just went work from home immediately.
Oh yeah, I think that I don't think we can remember, we can forget. I think as one of the senior leaders in the organization says, never waste a crisis. I think it was an opportunity. The way we looked at it, we wanted, when we started looking at teams and how we want to roll out Una on teams, we actually had a larger and a little plan which had a little more breadth, for us in the plan, if you would. But as COVID struck, a lot of that went out of the window, if you would, because you don't have the standard comms, if you would. Our prioritization changed. Stuff that we were looking to prioritize was how do I book a meeting room? Because that's been a massive use case for us. Or how do I book a taxi, if you would. But nobody was traveling anymore. Nobody was in office anymore. So what was important for the organization at that point was, do we have everybody's phone numbers in case we need to contact them? Do they have that updated in the core HCM system? So how do we make it easy for people to do that? So we built a feature in Una, for example, to say, how do you update your phone number? And that's much simpler. 2 clicks. You don't have to go anywhere else. In Una, you say, I want to update my phone number. It fetches the data in real time from your HCM system to say, here's what I see in your record. You want to add, update, modify. You can do all of that, and you press submit, and it goes and updates the system. Simple, easy, effective, but for us to be very valuable for us as the organization. When eventualities like some of these situations like COVID arise, it's so difficult to have one common place for information and making sure that people can refer to that. So for us, we leveraged Una. Some of the features that we built was pointing people to the same COVID kind of SharePoint information for us. We also had a ton of great best practices like work from home tips, because like you said, right, overnight, or rather over a period of couple of weeks, we had nearly everybody work from home. So how do we make sure that people can set up their desks in an ergonomic way? How do we know how do people learn to kind of take breaks in between? So for us, combining some of those into features of Una, where Una can give you some sort of nudges, some sort of best practices, but also can point you to the right direction, has been massive for us. One other, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please.
I was just going to say there are just 2 pieces of, if I can just end this in this way. One massive use case for Una has been as a comms channel. Now, if you can imagine, when you are in the office, there are events, there are posters, digital signages, what have you. But think when you're at home, all you have is email. But what we leveraged is when people are working from home, they're all on Microsoft Teams. And if there was a way for us to nudge people in Teams, we had a winner at hand with Una doing a role of a comms channel for some critical stuff, also for its own activation and some very key priorities. One of those were making sure that we allow people to give their health check status to us at a set frequency, should they desire to. So Una then not just acted as a comms channel, but just as a point above this, we integrated with the health check app, which Nandini is going to talk about, which was a great opportunity for us for people to interact and give us how are they feeling today. Making sure that we can combine the two. So Una acting as a nudge, a notification, but at a click of a button within Teams, people have a simple way for them to provide their health status, how they feel. So that has been a massive revelation. While our design was, or our strategy was to kind of build on Teams and do it faster, I think COVID just helped accelerate the whole adoption and the transformation for us.
And you touch on a really great point there, and I'm gonna go back to that communication strategy you said. Is like we know back to your connection between personal and professional. We know people almost always check their text messages, right, in a personal setting, right, which can also, of course, be professional. And in that same sense, though, in the workplace or at work, people also check their chat tab. And so these bots that we have available, and we're going to send you all links so you can get started with these because they're available as templates, but they've got a communication feature where you can reach out to users. And if you've joined our calls before, we've shown a couple of these, so I'll send these out to everybody as a follow-up. But we've seen organization reaching tens of thousands, if not multiple hundreds of thousands of users because they're sending these communications in the chat tab. And corporate communications departments are just dropping their jaws because they've never been able to reach people at that scale before where they're actually interacting and reading. Because things get lost in email, they get lost in a variety of purposes. But when you built this central hub like Unilever has, people know that their key information is coming here. I mean, it's just brilliant messaging and advice. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then on your point, so now we want to make sure that our people are safe and healthy when COVID happens. And so Nandini, can you walk us through the evolution, or actually this is the creation here of Health Check and background on it?
Absolutely. So when we entered into this pandemic situation, right? So Unilever gives the utmost priority always for our employees' safety and health and well-being. So keeping that in mind, so during the COVID crisis, a question came into our mind in terms of how can we accelerate or how can we help employees voluntarily submit their health information so that if there are any needs, then we can give them the custom guidelines and help them connect with the SMEs or the doctors if they would wish to, and give information about who are the main point of contacts at the respective locations, etc. So what we did was, like, Microsoft had published a template for crisis app, which we picked up and we built on top of that particular template and generated two different solutions. One being the Health Check app, which we rolled out globally for all users in Unilever within the Teams app, and the second being the COVID app for South Asia users. So both of these apps helps users to be able to voluntarily submit their health status. If they are if they're not feeling well, they submit their information, and the doctors gets alerted in terms of, at this particular location, these users are not well. Is there anything that we can take care of? Is there any guidelines that we can give them? Is there any step-by-step procedures or the process information that we can give to these employees, etc.? So all of these, so these apps acted as a one point to go for our employees during the crisis. Also, there were many newsletters, there were many articles related to the COVID that was published by our leadership team, so which were made available through this app right there for our employees. So they just have to go this particular app and see the organizational news or the company news related to the COVID, and it will be available there. And also, what the major advantage that we derived from these apps were, even during work from home or the remote working situation, it helped us to stay connected with our users. That's one of the biggest advantage. So we never felt that we are disconnected from our employees. So yeah, and also, like you said, Jace, right? So it is very important for us during this pandemic to understand how quickly we can respond to the situations at hand, and these apps helped us do that. And also, it's not about, we have been talking about different applications, core applications. We talked about Get Started, and then Unabot, and then Health Check and COVID apps, etc. So from a Unilever perspective or from a collaboration services perspective, if I were to say, it's not, we do not treat these as individual applications. We also give most priority to how these apps are connected to each other as well. Like Varun mentioned, right? So Una sends notifications for our employees to be able to submit their health check information. That's when we see how the COVID apps or the health check apps connected with Una. And also with respect to, say, for example, if there are any information related to the Teams bytes or the Teams information that the user is looking for, so we integrated with the Una bot again, where they can be directed to the Teams byte application. So it's really about how so while we have these core apps within the Teams app store, it's also about how these applications are talking to each other to stay connected.
That's fantastic, Nidhi. So what I'm going to cover here is just a recap of everything we just went through. So again, getting started with Teams, modernizing with Teams, responding with Teams. We're going to send you direct links at the end to get started. There's a ton of questions we're trying to get to because you guys have done such an amazing job sharing this journey. So thank you so much. What we wanted to close off with, though, in the last 10 minutes is the impact this has had on your organization. So some tangible results, as well as what you've learned, and if we have time for it, some of the next steps. And so maybe on that note, if we could hear your thoughts on the impact, and we've got a bunch of great tangible stuff here. If anything intangible has come up that's worth mentioning, it'd be awesome as well.
Yeah, so probably I'll go ahead with the teams and the applications impact, and then hand over to Varun to talk about the UnaBot impact, because I'm sure he has many more to talk on that. So if we look at the numbers on the screen and the graph, the little graph on the right hand side, right? So it actually shows us how exponentially we have grown over time with respect to the teams adoption. So there has been low ups and downs, but however, so we see that the increase in the teams adoption was effective with various ACM plans or adoption and change management plans, various programs put in place, etc. So today we see that more than 110K users are actively using Microsoft Teams, with more than 80% of users using the apps that we have hosted there. And few of the stats, just to quickly brush upon that, that is presented on the slide. So one thing that I wanted to highlight with respect to the COVID and health check apps is we have seen tremendous responses from our employees all over the globe with respect to the health check apps. As you can see, more than 250K responses in last 3 months that we have received from our employees. And similarly, with the Get Started evolving into a Teams Byte, so more than 20K active users we have seen for that particular app. We are making use of this particular app effectively.
It's incredible. And I'm gonna call one thing out here too, and I'm gonna be a little brash about the way that I say this, so forgive me for the folks listening, but you have 4 out of 5 plus users leveraging applications and Teams, some of the things that you just showed. And I just want to clarify for everybody, this is where you'll get users excited, and you don't necessarily have to build the amazing solutions and applications that Unilever has, but it's about getting your people to see that this is more than just a replacement for the previous tool that they had. This is a new way to simplify life and leverage the technology you've already given them. It's not about complicating, quite the opposite. It's about simplifying. And again, going back to the core message of Unilever. And we see the organizations that adopt the fastest are doing so by also leveraging the platform components of Teams, which are bringing together these solutions, again, that you already have access to. So it's a great call out there. And then, Varun, do you want to share some stats here on UnaBot, which is absolutely astounding looking at some of these numbers?
No, happy to, absolutely. I think there was one other question on the chat in terms of how we measure. So just if I can touch on that, Jace, very quickly. I think we use the HEART framework to measure. We are in the business of experience. So for us, happiness or satisfaction is massively important. So we do measure CSAT across channels for Una, make sure that that's really high and that kind of work. And if we can respond to whatever people are saying on real-time basis, if you would. We build whatever we build as purpose with engagement. So whatever we build, is it being used? Why is it not being used? So no different from a product, if you would. Adoption is great because we definitely want people to try it, but we focus a lot in terms of how many people try and don't come back to the platform. So retention for us is massively important. And then of course with self-service, task success, making sure that whatever we want to do, we can get that out in the first go. So what we have seen so far, as you can see some of the numbers here, UnaBot in Teams rolled out on 1st of April. Well, I had some feedback on the choice of date really, but 1st of April really. And we rolled it out. And since then, we've had roughly over 40,000 people come on to the bot platform with nearly 250,000 of chats so far. And this data is actually a couple of weeks behind now, but we've had a little over 200,000 business transactions, stuff that people are looking for or trying to find information with, and also like payslip, stuff like I need somebody help, who in HR do I talk to? Who's HR mapped to me, by the way? So getting your information on HR or other contacts, if you would. We have acronyms in all large enterprises. We thrive on acronyms, but imagine me coming in trying to find a meaning for an acronym. So we've got it integrated with our dictionary. If you would, you can find an acronym. You can look up a colleague. So we have a fantastic feature in Teams themselves, with the WhoBot, if you would. So we've integrated with the WhoBot so that you can look up anybody in the enterprise from the click of the button. You can book a leave, and I did mention about phone numbers, etc. And there are, like I said, 30+ features, if you would. What astounded me really is when we started using Una for health check reminders or the notifications that I mentioned, is the amount of impact it would have. We've had over 400,000 submissions across the board. That's nearly about a third of notifications that we have done. That's about 30% of response rate with the notifications, which is fantastic. The idea that Una is global, Una does speak many languages, if you would, we've had a lot of people come back and said, this is super cool. We were able to find my answer very quickly. And like I said, our journey is just begun. For us, we think this is really the tip of the iceberg. When we kind of roll out the entire bit across IT, finance, workplace, legal, all the key functions, I think this then becomes a powerhouse which can unlock really the productivity that we are after.
Just incredible. And so the last thing, we're getting a lot of questions on which everyone's doing their best to answer on looking back, some of your insight and advice for your peers. I added a couple of questions down at the bottom if we get to them, but given we only have 4 minutes left, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But anything, maybe we start here with you, Nandini. Is anything big that you want to call out here on looking back on the advice that you give to your peers?
Yeah, so a couple of them, as you can see on the screen, right? So, so for organization who are in the journey of Skype to Teams transition, I would suggest not to be long enough in the islands mode and make faster decisions to move into Teams only. The reason being in both modes parallelly at a time would lead to more confusions within the users, and you can eliminate that very easily by making quick decisions. And also, have your champions networks and the customer community. So there's one question on Yammer. So we do have Yammer communities for our champions and for our geographies and MCOs, which we very much use for any sort of communications and to hear voice from our customers. And having an app center of excellence, thanks for typing that, Jace. Having that app center of excellence, which would help drive these integrations into Microsoft Teams App Store, different applications, whether it could be plugins, whether it could be a custom applications or connectors, etc., would definitely increase the efficiency and will be able to guide them in terms of how best we can do that. And for all of these,
real quick, our next call, we're actually going to cover this from an organization. I think this is incredibly important, and it will answer a lot of questions that folks had on where do you get started? How do you think about these things? It's creating this central governing body that we showed on the first slide that kind of connects all these various resources internally is such a valuable way we're seeing organizations like yourselves do this. Sorry to cut you off there, but I just think it's a really important point.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and also for any of the program or the transitions or the change to happen within the organization, it cannot happen overnight or over a couple of days. So ACM is a base for the change to happen within the new users, and to bring that cultural change within the organization users is also important. And what we used was the ADKAR framework very efficiently for the Skype to Teams transition, and which worked out really well for us. And also, like I mentioned, so I would suggest organization who look forward to integrate the solutions to look for the existing solutions and see how they can match what needs they have within the business, and if needed, how they can evolve them or build on top of those existing solutions to bring the real value for the business.
Right. Hey, just real quick, Nandini, Varun, just a time check. Are you okay to run over a couple minutes, or should we close out here?
I can actually.
Okay, cool. Let's keep it going then, just so we make sure this is great. Varun, do you want to maybe walk through then what you have here on Unibot and a couple questions I think that came in, and look, maybe we save the advice to get started, but if you can touch on the amount of time dedicated to developing and maintaining Una as well, that'd be awesome.
Sure, but I can. So I think purely if I were to look back in terms of what we could do differently, I think the point that you mentioned around minimum lovable product and not an MVP, I think is massively important. You would imagine people have the choice. I think gone are the days where enterprise would just push down a software and everybody had to use it. In the consumer world, people have tremendous amount of choices, and if people don't like it, they won't come back to it. So making sure that what we build is down to a problem that you're trying to solve is can deliver integrated journeys. And as an example, you just don't want to book a leave. You can get your leave balance, you can book a leave, but at the end of it, if you can get a nice little reminder, say, hey, you've just booked a leave. Do you want to book an out of office reminder as well, or schedule it? Fantastic. Different systems in the background, but one integrated journey. Making sure whatever you build, is getting used, but also having a very keen eye on the, ear on the ground to make sure what are people saying, and work that through. So for us, it's been around understanding the problem statement, working through making sure that whatever we build is actually built on the back of user feedback and not just something that we want, and then keeping a constant ear on the ground to make sure it works. I think the key one for us is making sure that we think longevity. It's not a point in time fancy solution. Let's create a chatbot. For us, this is a way for us to transform our business. So for us, making sure that it's integrated in the process, part of the process, and not just a bolt-on, has been massive key. So that for us is, if I were to look back, I think those are some of the principles that kind of held us really well. In terms of amount of time dedicated to developing, we've got a small DevOps team, which looks at, so we've got a few people in the team. We've got a few developers. We've got a conversational architect, and we've been at it. I think we've been upgraded in teams. We've been at it since January this year, trying to understand, with the new architecture, with the Microsoft bot framework, and with teams as to what decisions we make, what menu to build, how do we create our conversation journeys, if you would. So I don't know, how do I answer amount of time dedicated to Una? My time, I think it's been significant. But yeah, we've got a small DevOps organization that kind of helps work and expand. As you can imagine, for us, it's been not just one system or one chatbot, it's integrated across our enterprise landscape.
Maybe one piece to add there too, Varun, and look, for organizations who don't necessarily have a bunch of resources internally, where we see most commonly, at least with the customers who have come on these calls and talked about their bot development, is there's usually someone who's in a project management type role. And forgive me, I don't want to give you that title, Varun, but I mean someone who sort of oversees the strategy and works together with the developer. And then we have a developer, and at a minimum, it's usually those two people putting this all together. But when you have a team like you do at Unilever, I think it's so much more valuable, because then you can, first of all, you got a diversity of perspective, of course, but then you can start to pull in, as you'll see here on what's next, other solutions that integrate with different departments, which is really valuable when you've got more people on the team who understand what's out there and what would make sense to integrate, et cetera, and you can kind of bounce ideas off of them.
Yeah, absolutely, Jess, because for us, like I said, for us as a team, we started very small, but like Nandini said, now a lot of our employee experience is based on what people want, in terms of delivery, what they want to be, what they want us to solve for. It's not us telling them, let's do payroll. It's them telling our, getting access to different payroll systems is difficult, or booking a meeting is difficult because there are different systems or 3 different clicks that I need to do. So getting driven from there, making sure that we can solve from there, I think is important. But then making sure that this also becomes a key place where people can find most of the stuff. People won't they'll come and try, but they won't stick around if they have to go to 5 different places for 5 different similar applications. What we're trying to solve is different bots, different applications, trying to bring them into one. With bots becoming a commonplace across the board, we don't want the same thing for the bots. We don't want people to go to 20 different bots to do it. So for us, making sure we can bring it all together, we can unlock speech, because that's kind of the new frontier we want to go, but make sure that Una still is the front end and can handle all of that complexity of other applications and bot in the back. I think is kind of where we want to go forward from here.
Awesome. And Nandini, real quick one here on, and I highlighted this because I wanted to touch on, is bringing the intranet into teams. We get this question a lot, particularly from folks who sit in IT departments who have made these investments over time. Now, we obviously saw how you brought the intranet in with Get Started and the evolution of Get Started to Teams Bytes. Are there thoughts, though, on really immersing more of the intranet into the Teams experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a work ongoing in backend where, so we call our intranet as Inside Unilever. It is a home for all our employees where they can view news and do some stuffs, I need tools, etc. So there's a work happening in the background at the moment to bring this Inside Unilever as a SP app within Microsoft Teams App Store. So we are working very closely with the app team from Microsoft to make this happen. So currently this is in private preview. However, expecting this to go GA by Q1 2021.
Amazing. And anything else that you want to call out there on the on your points? Not that we need to, but just to give you the opportunity.
Yeah, I think a key thing that to note over here, like I mentioned earlier, right? So it's not just about how many apps you're bringing to your app catalog or app store within the Microsoft Teams. It's really about what out of those apps are bringing value to your business. It's really important to implement a cycle of plan, do, check, and adjust, where we can regularly monitor in terms of, okay, these are the number of plugins or applications we have integrated, how many of them actually is being used by our Unilever users, and then make required decisions or act on, how else that can be improved is really important.
Fantastic stuff. Look, we'll give everybody the recap here on some of what's next, but I want to respect everyone's time because we're already 6 minutes over. So again, thank you both so much. Just a quick recap. I posted these links in the chat. I will also send them as an email follow-up. But if you want to get started with some of these solutions on your own, we're going to hand out these AKA links, which are just shortened URLs, so you can get started on all these. And I've even highlighted some of the specifics that you might want to look for. For example, frequently asked questions bot when you go to our app templates page. We don't have the next registration page up, so what we'll do is we'll send everybody a follow-up once we have it up, and which will be here very soon, and let you know about our next customer is going to be coming on. And then finally, if you want to keep the conversation going, shoot me an email. We've got a team inside of our Microsoft tenant with a bunch of customers, and we keep these conversations going. We share more content like this so you can see what your peers around the world are doing and engage in conversations around it. And we'd be more than happy to have you. So my email's right there. Feel free to shoot me a message. And again, massive thank you to Varun and Dini, Emma, everybody on the back end helping out, answering the questions. You guys are all unbelievable. Makes my job really easy, but we learned so much today, and I think there's unanimous positivity coming from the feedback on this call. So really, really appreciate your support and your time.
We absolutely loved it here, Jace. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank
you very much for having us here, Jace and Emma.
All right, thank you all. We'll see you all soon. Thank you again for joining in and calling in and listening to the live event.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.